When you restrain, Chosen One, it is not weakness, it is sacred authority. There are forces in this world that thrive on chaos, manipulation, and reaction. They don't fear your voice when you speak from impulse. They fear your silence when it's grounded in discernment. When you choose to withhold, when you say nothing while carrying the fullness of understanding within you, you are moving with the power of heaven. Restraint is not about shrinking back. It's about knowing the exact moment to act and the precise moment to hold. It is a spiritual discipline that confounds the enemy because it reveals control, maturity, and mastery. Those who try to provoke you are unsettled by what they can't predict, your restraint, because what they don't realize is that your silence is not surrender, it's surveillance. You have been trained to measure your responses not by emotion, but by assignment. This is why the warfare around you intensifies when you step into a season of stillness. Hell is not afraid of your noise, it's afraid of your knowing. When you restrain, you remove access to your energy. You cut off the power supply to those who are feeding off your reactions. Every time you refuse to explain yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, you reclaim territory in the spirit. There is a divine strength in staying planted when the enemy expects you to swing. What shakes them is that you no longer feel the need to prove anything. You are walking proof and they can't stop watching what they can't control. Three forces tremble when you restrain: the spirit of accusation, the spirit of manipulation, and the spirit of distraction. Accusation feeds on your defense, but your silence starves it. Manipulation loses its grip when you refuse to react on command. Distraction collapses when you stay focused on your assignment instead of their bait. These forces don't just fear your power, they fear your clarity. They want you busy defending what God has already settled. But when you restrain, you remind them you're not on trial, you're on mission. Every moment you don't engage the unnecessary, you invest in the eternal. Restraint is warfare, and you're winning. You are no longer bound by the need to be understood. The season of explaining, proving, and validating is over. God did not anoint you to convince people. He anointed you to confront systems. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be light, and light doesn't argue with darkness, it exposes it. Restraint is not passive, it's precise. It's how generals move before a war. It's how kings wait before they decree. It's how prophets listen before they speak. This is the discipline that keeps your anointing from leaking into the wrong spaces. Heaven honors your restraint because it proves you've learned how to carry glory without spilling it on fools. What used to provoke you no longer holds weight. That's not numbness, it's discernment. The more you grow, the more you realize your silence carries more authority than your rebuttal. You don't owe everyone access to your clarity. When you restrain, you make room for God to speak on your behalf. And when He speaks, no rebuttal can stand. Those who misunderstood you will watch as God vindicates you without your voice ever needing to raise. This is the sacred strength they never saw coming. They prepared for a fight, but you came with fire. And not the fire that consumes, but the fire that refines. The ones who tried to bait you are confused by your peace. They can't figure out how you're not responding, not breaking, not retreating. It's because you finally understood your worth. You're no longer accessible to foolishness. You're too focused to be flustered, too grounded to be dragged, and too anointed to be distracted. This is what scares them. Your stillness is not weakness, it's strategy. You're not frozen, you're waiting, you're not afraid, you're aligned. And when you move, it will be with the full backing of heaven's command. God is proud of the way you've grown. Every time you chose peace over retaliation, He marked it. Every time you held your tongue when you had every right to speak, He honored it. You are not being overlooked, you are being trusted. Because those who can be quiet under pressure are the ones God can trust with power. You are not muzzled, you are measured. And the next time you speak, mountains will move, enemies will scatter, and heaven will confirm what earth tried to deny. Restraint is your sacred strength, Chosen One. Use it with holy precision. They watched you, waiting for the reaction that never came. They threw stones of insult, of betrayal, of false witness, fully expecting you to break character. But Chosen One, you didn't flinch. Because restraint has now become your sword. Your silence cut deeper than words ever could. Your lack of engagement exposed the immaturity of their warfare. Heaven applauded what they mistook for hesitation. You were not caught off guard. You were following divine strategy. They came with fire to burn you, but found you untouchable because you now operate in a different frequency. You are walking in the strength of divine stillness, a stillness they cannot replicate or comprehend. The immature spirit needs noise, chaos, and applause to feel powerful. But the spirit of the chosen one? It walks in rooms silently and shifts the entire atmosphere. You don't have to raise your voice. Your presence is your statement. You don't have to prove your wisdom. Your fruit speaks louder than their doubt. That is what makes them afraid. You are no longer playing their games. You're building altars while they're throwing tantrums. They expected a counterattack, but received a consecration instead. The spirit of accusation thrives on your reaction. It grows when you try to clear your name in human courtrooms, but heaven already ruled in your favor. You are not obligated to explain deliverance to demons. You owe no defense to spirits that God has already judged. Your refusal to engage is not cowardice, it is consecrated warfare. You don't battle every voice that rises against you. You rise above them. The truth does not argue, it stands, and it's standing inside of you. Every time you held back your clapback, God released a comeback. There is a discipline that only warriors understand, knowing when to fight and when to fast. You, chosen one, have mastered this. While others react to be seen, you remain unseen to be effective. That silence they mocked is the sound of heaven's preparation. While they're watching you, God is about to move through you. You are the calm before the storm, not because you're inactive, but because you're intentional. And that intention is terrifying to every spirit that tried to manipulate your journey. What they thought was your silence was actually your setup. Let's take a quick moment to lock this in. If this is speaking to you, hit the like button. Subscribe so you never miss what God's pouring out here. And comment 55 below. That number seals your covenant and divine alignment. There are doors opening for you because of what you didn't say. There are blessings being released because of what you didn't respond to. This is the paradox of restraint. It multiplies what others thought would diminish you. Your silence was louder in heaven than their attacks were on earth. God saw every moment you wanted to speak, to fight, to prove, and he said, "I'll handle it." Because when you let him speak for you, the outcome isn't just a win, it's a wonder. He won't just defend you, he'll elevate you. You are now marked by heaven as one who can be trusted with secrets. God doesn't share his mysteries with noisy spirits. He speaks to those who know how to be still. You're in a sacred circle now, where divine revelation meets divine restraint. And in this space, your enemies lose their influence. They can no longer pull you into carnal arguments. They can no longer bait you into emotional exchanges. They are disarmed by your discipline. You've become the kind of vessel God uses to silence storms. And because you didn't take the bait, you're about to take the blessing. You didn't retaliate, you repositioned. You didn't seek revenge, you stepped into revelation. And now everything they said, everything they planned, everything they whispered, it's all falling apart without your hand ever needing to move. That's the kind of power restraint carries. You are a storm in silence, a weapon that doesn't flash but still strikes. And those three forces, accusation, manipulation, distraction, they have now fled. Because your silence has summoned heaven. They underestimated what was happening in your stillness. They assumed nothing was moving because you were. But what they couldn't see, chosen one, is that heaven doesn't work on performance. It works on alignment. And your restraint brought alignment. You chose stillness, but heaven went to war. You chose silence, but angels were dispatched. You chose not to clap back, and God clapped back through divine reversals. Don't ever think your restraint was inactivity. It was invitation. Invitation for God to prove he is the one who fights your battles better than you ever could. The most dangerous chosen ones are the ones who no longer need attention. You've been delivered from the desire to be right, the need to be seen, and the urge to react. Now you're dangerous to every spirit that once controlled you, because you have nothing to prove and everything to protect. You are protecting your peace, your vision, your covenant. They want a piece of your power, but not the price that shaped it. What they don't understand is that your silence was purchased in the furnace. You didn't learn to be still because you were passive. You learned because you survived. God trained you for this. The restraint you walk in now was forged in long seasons of misunderstanding. There were times you wanted to explain everything, plead your case, break your silence, confront the slander. But God said, "Hold," and you did. And because you obeyed him in the tension, you now carry authority in the silence. People wonder why your presence shifts atmospheres. It's because you've become a sanctuary. You don't have to say a word to command respect. You don't have to defend your power. The oil you carry does the talking. This is what scares them the most. Your restraint exposed their intentions. When you stopped playing their game, you saw the entire board. You saw who was stirring the pot. You saw who was benefiting from your distraction, and in silence you reclaimed your discernment. Now they can't predict you, they can't access you, they can't use you. They fear what you'll do next, because your next move is no longer visible to them. That's the true power of sacred restraint. It removes the enemy's leverage and puts all authority back in your hands. You were once an open gate, accessible, explainable, visible. Now, you've become a locked vault. Only heaven has the key. Your presence is no longer public property. It is a consecrated space. That's why some people left. They couldn't manipulate what they could no longer access. Your silence frustrated their agenda. Your stillness disrupted their narrative. When they could no longer stir you, they had to expose themselves. And you saw the truth not through arguments, but through peace. That's the power of restraint. It reveals what war tries to hide. You are walking proof that not every storm requires a statement. You are learning that silence can carry thunder. When you stopped trying to be understood, heaven gave you revelation, and that revelation became your strategy. You've been navigating this season not with opinions, but with divine instructions. You're not responding emotionally, you're moving prophetically. And while others are still processing pain through performance, you are healing in quiet victory. What looked like distance was actually deliverance. They don't know how close they were to provoking your old self. But you, chosen one, buried that version in the wilderness. And the restraint they witnessed was not just maturity, it was resurrection. You are no longer reactive. You are reborn. The version of you that used to explain everything is gone. The version that tried to keep everyone comfortable no longer exists. You've been refined into a vessel that values peace over pride, clarity over clout, and obedience over outrage. You are no longer loud, but you are lethal. And from this day forward, your silence will continue to speak. It will speak of power, of presence, of purpose. It will announce that you have arrived in a place where voices don't validate you. Vision does. It will declare that you're done arguing with demons dressed as people. It will remind the atmosphere that heaven is your witness and God is your defender. And every time they look for a reaction and find none, they'll realize the truth. Your restraint is the roar they feared all along. Chosen one, let me make this clear. Your restraint was not natural, it was supernatural. It was not your personality, it was your posture. Heaven taught you how to sit in stillness while everything around you tried to stir you, and that posture of peace made hell nervous. Because you didn't just walk away, you ascended. You rose above every petty invitation into conflict. You declined the drama, you deleted the bait. You turned your focus inward, upward, and forward. That wasn't avoidance, that was advancement. Your restraint was evidence that your spirit outgrew your surroundings. What they used to use to control you no longer works. Your triggers got healed, your wounds got closed, your worth got rooted. So now, when the same patterns try to emerge, they fall flat. They can't spark what God has already extinguished. Your restraint isn't because you're ignoring what's happening, it's because you're seeing too clearly to be pulled back into blindness. They think you've gone quiet, but you haven't gone quiet, you've gone higher. You're operating above the noise, above the bait, above the distraction. This is elevation by silence. This silence didn't come cheap. It cost you the comfort of being liked. It cost you the false reward of being the bigger person in battles God never assigned. It cost you the applause of people who only clapped when you explained yourself. But you chose to lose the crowd and keep your crown. And now you walk in a new clarity that cannot be purchased, mimicked, or manipulated. You walk in the clarity of a spirit who hears God over gossip, truth over trends, and destiny over drama. You've become one they can no longer reach because you no longer reach back. This is your strength, not your ability to speak, but your wisdom to wait. Not your knowledge of everything, but your surrender to the right things. Restraint has become your response, because revelation has become your rhythm. You don't need to react because you've already seen how it ends. You've seen the traps, you've seen the cycles, and you've seen your future, and now you protect it with restraint. You don't throw pearls anymore. You don't engage for closure anymore. You don't explain your yes or your no anymore, because God is your clarity, and your restraint is your proof. You are no longer the person who needs resolution with people who broke your peace. You are no longer trying to win debates that God never called you to enter. You've learned the sacred art of letting God finish what they started. That's what makes you a threat. You fight without fighting. You win without striving. You overcome without engaging. You've tapped into the divine technology of stillness. And in that stillness, heaven works. In that stillness, doors open. In that stillness, enemies fall. Because restraint isn't delay, it's divine timing. And while they spin their wheels trying to stir something in you, you are building altars in silence. You are praying without public display. You are fasting without fanfare. You are growing roots while they perform leaves. And when the wind comes, and it will come, they'll fall, but you'll remain. Why? Because your restraint built stability. You weren't just waiting, you were anchoring. And when the shaking starts, you won't be moved. This is what makes your silence sacred. It has roots, it has weight, it holds. They underestimated what God could do with a silent servant. They expected thunder, but didn't expect thunder to be hidden inside your calm. They thought silence meant stuck, but you were soaring in dimensions they can't access. And now God is about to make public what you built in private. They're going to witness the fruit of your restraint, not because you bragged, but because God rewards those who restrain not out of fear, but out of obedience. You didn't hold back because you were afraid. You held back because you were focused, and now the reward is coming. This is the season where the world sees what sacred silence produces. Not just peace, but power. Not just stillness, but strategy. Not just delay, but dominion. You've grown into a warrior that doesn't need to roar to be heard. You've become a force that doesn't need to announce every move. You've ascended into a frequency that breaks chains without breaking silence. And chosen one, that is why hell fears your restraint. Because your silence isn't empty, it's sacred. And sacred silence always ends in supernatural reward. There is a realm of authority that only the restrained can walk in. You have now entered it. This realm is reserved for those who don't just hear God, but obey Him when it costs. You didn't respond because your spirit knew the trap. You didn't react because your destiny wasn't worth the detour. And now, chosen one, the atmosphere is shifting in your favor. The very voices that mocked your silence are being silenced. The very forces that tried to provoke your downfall are watching you ascend. You chose the narrow road, and now the broad blessing is coming. Restraint has cleared your path, and now elevation can begin. Your restraint has created a vacuum only God can fill. What you refused to say, He is about to declare. What you chose not to correct, He is about to confront. What you let go of, He is about to restore, pressed down, shaken together and running over. They thought your silence meant loss, but heaven sees it as seed. And now the harvest is here. Everything you could have defended, God is about to multiply. Everything you could have clapped back at, God is about to redeem. You kept your peace, and now peace is about to keep you. You kept your mouth shut, and now heaven's about to open its mouth for you. Your restraint was a yes in disguise, a yes to purpose, a yes to maturity, a yes to alignment. It was you choosing the mountain instead of the crowd. It was you saying, I'd rather lose the argument and keep my assignment. And because you made that decision, the atmosphere around you has shifted. You've stepped into a frequency where battles end before they begin. Because when you carry that kind of stillness, even warfare respects your presence. Demons recognize it, doors respond to it, and heaven partners with it. This is the reward of sacred strength. When others rise in outrage, you rise in revelation. That's why your responses look different. You're no longer trying to prove you're right, you're trying to stay in position. You've learned that favor flows faster in silence than it does in conflict. You've learned that sometimes your greatest move is your refusal to move. And now you see it clearly. Your restraint was never about control. It was about clarity. It positioned you, it purified you, it protected you. And now the very silence you honored is about to be your loudest testimony. They wanted your response, but God wanted your reverence. They wanted your reaction, but God wanted your restraint. And you gave him what he asked for. That's why the winds are about to shift in your direction. That's why the release is coming with acceleration. You've sown in silence. Now you'll reap in open display. You'll be blessed in a way that confirms restraint was not in vain. It was divine. People who haven't heard from you in months will see the fruit of what God was doing in your stillness. They'll see that silence wasn't empty. It was sacred construction. Don't be surprised when the tables turn without your hand touching them. Don't be shocked when the reversal happens and you never had to lift your voice. God is making you a sign, an example of what happens when a chosen one restrains instead of retaliates. They'll ask how you stayed so calm. You'll say, it wasn't me, because you know, the strength wasn't yours. It was heaven's. The silence wasn't yours. It was obedience. And the reward isn't yours either. It's a testimony. That restraint reveals who's really ruling your life. You are walking into rooms that are opening because of what you didn't say. You are stepping into alignment that formed because you refused to be pulled off course. That job, that opportunity, that connection, that breakthrough, they are all fruits of restraint. They are not accidental, they are strategic. God lined them up the moment you shut your mouth and opened your heart. The silence was the key, and now everything is about to unlock. Your yes to stillness has unlocked access to places noise would have destroyed. This is divine reversal, and you're the living evidence of it. And because you remained under control, you're about to walk in command. You didn't force your way in, so God's about to bring you in. You didn't manipulate your way to the front, so God is placing you at the head. This is how heaven honors restraint, not just with reward, but with reign. You are not just coming out with blessings, you are coming out with authority. Because when God can trust you to be still, he can trust you to speak. And when you speak again, chosen one, every force that once provoked you will tremble at the sound. There is a shift taking place, and chosen one, you are the evidence of it. This is no longer about surviving emotional battles. It's about stewarding spiritual assignments. Your restraint has become a weapon heaven uses to silence the accuser. You are not just avoiding conflict, you are mastering dominion. You don't just walk away because you're tired, you walk away because you're anointed. You've tasted what it's like to be drained by unnecessary warfare, and you've vowed never to waste another drop of oil on unassigned conversations. This is wisdom. This is war. This is your sacred strength taking full form. They didn't expect you to master your emotions. They thought you'd stay trapped in the same cycles, triggered, flustered, loud, reactive. But instead you went inward. You sat with God, you grew, you cried in silence, and came out in strategy. You fasted in secret and emerged in fire. Now, you're not driven by emotions, you're governed by mission. You don't fight back for attention, you stand back for authority. And that shift, it broke chains. You broke generational patterns, not with a shout, but with a stillness. You didn't just survive, you recalibrated. Your refusal to entertain distractions is your greatest yes to destiny. Every time you said no to the bait, you said yes to the breakthrough. And now, the path ahead of you is being cleared with divine precision. Your restraint unlocked what retaliation would have forfeited. What seemed like holding back was actually moving ahead. You may have looked quiet to man, but heaven saw you running in the spirit. You were racing past distractions, offenses, and invitations to argue. And now, because you stayed focused, the reward has no delay. This next season is not for those who talk the loudest, but for those who trusted the longest. You held your peace while others lost theirs. You stayed hidden while others demanded spotlight. You let God vindicate you while others broadcasted their pain. And now the shift is visible. Doors are opening for you that your words didn't unlock, but your silence did. Promotions are coming to you, not because you shouted your worth, but because you proved it in the stillness. You were faithful in silence, and now it's your time to speak from victory. You're not the same, and that's why they can't reach you anymore. You no longer speak the language of insecurity. You no longer respond to manipulation. You no longer seek validation from those who never saw you clearly. God healed your responses in the silence. He stripped you of the need to defend yourself. And in that quiet, He gave you discernment, direction, and deliverance. So now when the same energy comes knocking, you don't even flinch. You smile, not because you're unbothered, but because you're unbreakable. They used to provoke your voice, now they tremble at your presence. That's the evolution. You didn't lose power when you stopped reacting, you found it. You didn't fall behind when you got quiet, you caught up with heaven's timing. This is not regression, this is refinement. You are now someone who moves mountains without making noise, who shifts rooms without needing attention, who walks in rooms not to be seen, but to be sent. You've become the kind of person heaven can trust with the next level. And it's here now. Chosen one, this next level doesn't require more noise. It requires more knowing. Not knowing facts, but knowing God. Knowing His pace. Knowing His strategy. Knowing when to speak and when to be still. You have matured into one who walks with wisdom. You're no longer moved by urgency. You're anchored by insight. And that anchor is why you haven't been swept away. You're not floating in uncertainty. You're planted in promise. And from that place, you'll move with precision, speak with power, and rest with peace. And rest assured, every force that feared your voice now fears your silence even more. Because your silence means God is about to speak. Your restraint means release is coming. Your stillness means something bigger is brewing. And they can feel it. The forces that once provoked you are now retreating, not because you shouted, but because you outlasted them in silence. They can't pull you back because they never saw you climb. You ascended quietly, and now your elevation is loud. You've come too far to entertain what you've outgrown. Your silence has become your sanctuary, your restraint, your strategy, and your peace, your proof. This is not the same battleground, and you are not the same warrior. Chosen one, you've stepped into a spiritual maturity that cannot be faked, copied, or taught. It was forged. Forged through fires that should have consumed you, through seasons that should have broken you, and through betrayals that should have silenced you. But instead of breaking down, you bowed down, and in that bowing you rose. Your strength is no longer in how you fight. It's in how you wait. It's in how you choose purpose over provocation. Your restraint is not just keeping you, it's crowning you. God is placing authority on you that others forfeited when they chose chaos. You didn't follow the noise. You followed the whisper. You stayed in the secret place when others chased platforms. You waited when others rushed. You watched when others reacted, and now heaven is watching you with delight, because what they tried to provoke, God used to promote. The enemies that baited you are witnessing your rise, and they can't touch it, can't block it, can't explain it, because what you're walking in wasn't earned through striving. It was given through silence. This is why doors are opening now. Not because you shouted them open, but because you silenced the distractions that would have kept them closed. You're walking in the kind of favor that doesn't make sense on paper, but makes perfect sense in the spirit. Because you chose the higher path, the one with fewer cheers but greater oil. You chose integrity when manipulation seemed easier. You chose restraint when explosions seemed justified. You chose wisdom over war. And because of that, you're about to walk in rooms you didn't apply for, sit at tables you weren't invited to, and receive blessings that outrun your resume. There's a shift in your voice now, because you no longer speak from pain, but from position. You're not speaking to prove anymore. You're speaking to align. When you open your mouth now, it's heaven that speaks through you, not trauma, not ego, not fear, but truth, power, and grace. You're not just echoing emotions, you're releasing atmospheres. And that's why you had to be silent for so long. God was recalibrating your sound. He was teaching you how to carry weight without bleeding, how to speak fire without burning out, how to roar without noise. Let's seal this season with action. If this message hit deep, hit the like button. Subscribe right now. We go deeper with every word. And comment 55 below. Covenant, new beginnings, divine alignment. Your silence was never about suppression. It was about submission. Submission to the process. Submission to the pruning. Submission to the timing. And now, because you submitted in silence, You will stand in authority. You will speak, and demons will tremble. You will decree, and doors will respond. You will release what's been building inside you, not recklessly but righteously. You've been trusted with silence. Now you're being entrusted with sound, and your voice, forged in the fire of restraint, carries a frequency that cuts through darkness. They used to question your absence, now they'll marvel at your return. But you're not coming back the same. You're not coming back to prove. You're not coming back to explain. You're coming back with fruit, with favor, with fire. And those who once doubted your silence will have no choice but to witness your strength. Because when God restores, He doesn't do it quietly. He rewards your hidden obedience with undeniable elevation. And that's what this season is. It's the reward for every moment you didn't retaliate, every argument you declined, every clapback you surrendered. You are being launched now, but not with noise, with weight. The kind of weight that silences rooms, the kind of favor that answers questions, the kind of power that needs no introduction. They will ask, "How did you get here?" And your answer will be simple: I stayed still, I stayed silent, I stayed surrendered. That's the code, that's the key. And that's why you're unstoppable now. Because what they tried to bury in silence, God just resurrected with glory. You didn't just survive this season, you mastered it. And heaven took note. Chosen one, you walked through fire and kept your peace. You were lied on and said nothing. You were baited and never bit. You were mocked and stayed quiet. That wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. That wasn't passivity, it was power. And now, as the dust settles, you're standing in a realm of favor that only the restrained can access. The oil you carry was extracted in silence. The weight you walk in was developed when no one saw, and now your silence has become your signature. Everything they didn't hear from you is now being revealed through you. The blessings, the doors, the clarity, the fruit. You didn't explain, you produced, you didn't argue, you outlasted. And now what they tried to provoke has been overruled by what heaven promised. You didn't miss your moment by being silent. You met it. You didn't delay your future by staying still. You defended it. And the proof is in your peace. You're no longer anxious, no longer reactive, no longer waiting for them to understand. You've already been validated by the only voice that matters, God's. Chosen one, this is your release. The silence is breaking, not with noise but with glory. You're about to see manifestation in every area you restrained. The prayers you whispered while biting your tongue, answered. The dreams you tucked away because of distraction, revived. The vision you protected while others mocked, fulfilled. Because you held your posture, now heaven is elevating your position. This is not a reward for performance, it's a reward for obedience. And God doesn't bless potential, He blesses surrender. And you surrendered the loudness to carry the oil. Let this be your final stance. Never again explain your anointing to the unassigned. Never again water down your voice to accommodate chaos. Never again react where God called you to reign. You are different now, built in silence, released in power. And your very presence is prophetic. Let them wonder. Let them talk. Let them speculate. Because God's about to show what sacred restraint creates. And when He does, they won't just respect your silence. They'll fear your strength.